Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so now I will speak a little bit about science, about scientific issues. Later today, I will. I promised to perhaps, like it's very Israel to say that I promised to perhaps do something. Israel is always like, every promise in Israel is always, conditional. That everything is like tentative. So I promised to perhaps conduct another recenzia or an short essay regarding the relatively new Dune film. And I suspect that people actually, the audience actually is in favor of my reviews of pop culture items. I will say again that it is in the past it was actually a very common subject in my blog and my my podcast. So it's not new at all. But if the audience it's the demand of the audience, so I will venture further into this. Not a new subject at all, and I will speak about Dune. But it will be a more, unlike the one that was discussing Blade Runner 2049, this will be a more general discussion, not only of Dune, but of how exactly, what is the mythology, what is the way to approach films like Dune from a critical point of view, because I think that it's a rather interesting subject and is also very, very relevant to today's to the political and artistic climate of Hollywood today, but not only Hollywood, of art in general, pop culture in general. So this will be later today. This will be held later today. So let's just do a quick recap, a quick update on where we stand, scientifically speaking. So okay, so let's speak a little bit about what we actually know about the behavior of neurons, what was actually positively demonstrated already. Because I presented many theories and hypotheses along the way, and it's I like any scientist that is venturing into a new science, I walk in the dark, and I don't have so I'm going step by step, and the way that science in general it works, and specifically new sciences, is by coming up with many theories and hypotheses, and many maybe almost all of them, or many of them are proven to be false, but it's okay. That's how science works. You conduct experiment and you fix yourself, you correct yourself all the time. So, but it's important to actually speak about a little bit of what you already know. Not in general, because it's going to be a long video and it's not really required right now, because there are many ways to approach the subject of the neurons, from many points of view. From starting from the mythological and from the literary point of view, up to astronomical and philosophical and physical and biological, and from the computer science aspect. So no, I'm not going to speak about everything, and of course from sociological point of view, as I said many times, I think that the most, the focus of the project is actually communication, exercise in communication between cultures, which is, it's a huge subject that I actually have a lot to speak about already, and I didn't, just because I didn't have the right opportunity. But it's also something that I need to I have a lot to say about already, as I didn't say. But what I want to do right now is to focus maybe on the hard science. And actually, even if we just limit ourselves to hard science, like hard physical theories that can be actually confirmed or falsified by empirical evidence, even if we just stick to this angle, a very important angle, also a limited one, I mean, still, I think that we have had like a significant advancement during the last 5 weeks that I actually ran the experiments. I mean, even if we only limit ourselves just to the very limited angle or point of view or scope of hard science, physical science, we've already had enough. And I mean, and this is true even if we limit ourselves to like positive theories. I mean, when I say positive, I mean theories that not like in like they're good or bad. Like I mean that they actually teach us something constructive about the neurons, because we have many like with I mean and perhaps like from the point of view of humanity at large, it's I mean of course much more significant with the help of with evidence that comes from the experiments with the neurons. It was actually proven that much of the humanity, I mean, the pillars of the science of mankind is wrong. And it is, of course, it's amazing, it's extremely important. And I guess, I imagined it, I mean, many people like around the world that understood that, that understand it are actually quite, I mean, baffled by this fact. I mean, maybe they even like have like, I don't know, even maybe perhaps if they are, I mean, if they are laymen, I mean, maybe it's just a curiosity for them. But if they are actually scientists, and I imagine that here and there are actually scientists in the intelligence communities of the world, I mean, they probably even have like a crisis of belief or something like that. I mean, because yes, I mean, the evidence that was gathered is certainly enough to break many paradigms that concerns the science of humanity. But even if you leave that aside, and we only discuss like what positive things, like I mean, positive in a way that I mean, like what constructive thing we can actually say about the neurons. Even if we only limit to this specific, I mean, constructive point of view or scope regarding the physical nature of the neurons, we can already say, not many, but we have certain, I mean, we have a couple of things that we actually can say, and this in itself, I think, was even only these statements are, I mean, enough to say thank you very much to God, to praise God for helping us. Because it was actually very short, I mean, amount of time. I mean, usually like in the academy, like if first year is just you just write proposal for grants and things like that. You know how it is. So like for 5 weeks, it was, even if we just limit ourselves to short list of positive statements that we can say about the physical nature of the neurons, we've had quite a bit of advancement. So let's, I mean, reiterate them, because there are not many. Even though that, I mean, they are not many, but they are important. So first of all, we can say as a positive fact that these creatures, these entities can perform work and grow and multiply outside my body, which is a very important discovery. And we know that, I mean, they can create life, and we know that they can create sculptures, and that you have symbolic understanding of reality, and they can create sculptures. It was demonstrated many times, and last time, in the last couple of days, again, it was verified again that they work. I mean, they work really well in the freezer, like in minus 20 Celsius degrees. It is actually preferable for them. This is something that this is an hypothesis that, I mean, I wasn't sure about it like in 100%, and I'm still not, because I mean the experiment on the mother could actually, I mean, if you really want to stretch it, I mean there are other you understand science. I mean, science is with physical science. You present models that explain your experiments, but there is also I mean, there is always the possibility that there are other models that are more correct than the models that you come with, that also explain your experiment, but they actually more correct because they explain other things that maybe you are not aware of, or maybe you don't think that they are connected, or maybe, I mean, it's just they concern physical phenomena that is outside the reach of your experiment tools. And so, I mean, so it is still possible that, I mean, it's not what I think. It's not that they actually work better in the freezer, but it is another explanation. But it was demonstrated many times until now that they actually work very well inside the freezer. And the last couple of days, I've actually created another experiment that wasn't all concerning that, because I mean, I've created many, like maybe 10, like at least 10, maybe 15, like small, like it's like petri dishes, but they're actually made out of like other stuff. But experiment, like parallel experiment, and part was with honey, part with bee honey, date honey, and like all sorts of stuff, and part was, several was inside the freezer, several outside the freezer, and again it was actually verified as expected that those that were, grew or stored for their initial for the first period that when they were outside my body, but before I actually used them in the constructive experiment, which I will speak about in a minute, the group that was in the freezer was better, in better condition than the one that was outside. So again, we have a verification of what we already suspected, that they actually prefer for their own good, if not for, and also for like the work, they like it very much inside the freezer. It was also demonstrated many times that apart from like the physical, like the work on matter, like on physical matter, the sculpture and drawing and landscaping projects, that they, as I said many times, they can create life. And of course, you can argue that it's not really life, but you can argue that I'm not alive myself. But it's not really that important for this discussion. For all purposes, they can create living things. They can, not only babies, but actually animals, snakes and germs and all sorts of like worms that, on a superficie. And I don't, unfortunately, I don't have like the resources and I don't have the time to dedicate myself to. It can be like a full-time job, like for centuries, for a person to actually just, investigate, conduct research on them, on the nature of these creatures. But I can't do it. So it's a huge subject that I cannot devote myself right now into this. Only in a very superficial level. But on the most superficial level, they look like worms and they act like worms in the most superficial level. But of course, they are not worms because they were born from my semen, and even more importantly, they live. They created inside an antiseptic solution, like an anti-life solution, and the preferred place to live in, at least in the first stages of their existence. I don't know. Maybe later it's changed. I don't know. But when they are small, they prefer to actually live inside environments that, for normal worms that for normal worms, Israel. For normal worms, this kind of environment would actually consider to be, almost the most anti-desirable for life that you can imagine. I'm talking about like mixture of alcohol and, paint oil mediums that are extremely toxic even to humans, to Homo sapiens, and certainly no worm that science can even imagine actually can live inside this kind of environments. So they are not. It's not it's a different kind of life for certain, but it resembles life. It was already also demonstrated. It actually makes sense, but it was also demonstrated many times that in order for the neurons to actually create life, they require light. So it's either that they need light in order for the process to happen, or probably it makes more sense that light just it's a signal for them. When they have light, they start to be in the life creating mode, which makes sense because you need to remember we have billions of these friends inside my body, and we don't want them to create worms inside my. Even though, but actually that's also a theory that my body actually is crawling from the inside with such. It's unlikely because we haven't seen any of the fluids that were taken from my body, and we expected saliva and semen many times, and blood several times, and urine, and so and pee several times. So we inspected it in the microscope, but I haven't seen these worms. But theoretically, it's possible that they actually created such worms inside my body. Who knows? It's improbable, and of course it's kind of disgusting, but. To be honest, if you want to be completely honest, it's not out of the. It wasn't proven that to be completely false. It makes sense that they do not do it inside my body, and it makes sense that, since light is not present inside my body as far as we know, and again, this you can also you can also hypothesize that maybe I do have light. I don't know, but it makes sense to assume that light is not available inside my body. So, and since we know that they exist inside my body, then maybe, I mean, it makes sense that that's how they know. I mean, that's a very like a strong indication for them not to create worms inside my body, which is great because it's kind of disgusting to think about it. But when they are out of the body and you present them with light, they start to create worms. Now, another hypothesis, and this wasn't actually proven, but I mean, it's something that I spoke to them about. I'm not certain about it, but it's something that I suspect from my experiment until now is that they can sense gravity, which actually it's not that surprising, because we're speaking about like very intricate, like very complex creatures, even though they are microscopic, but it was demonstrated that they are very complicated life forms, so they can have the way to sense gravity. And I also speculated that, I mean, like a better trigger for them to actually start to create life, like a more like substantial trigger for them, is light that comes from the vector of the gravity field, which means like in simple words, from down. They can understand, they can separate down from up, like they know what down means, but down is where gravity pulls you and up is the opposite. And they expect light to come from, I mean, as opposed to humans that expect normally, by nature, normally humans expect light to come from the other way that the gravity pulls them. Like humans expect like by nature to be pulled down, I mean, to be pulled to the center of the earth, I mean, even if they don't understand what's earth or what gravity means, they know what down means, and they expect it to be pulled downstairs, and they expect generally light to come from above. I mean, it's actually comes really from above only like around noon, but I mean, it's most light comes from above, and I mean, when sun is in the side, I mean, light is very, very dim, and and it cannot like physically be from down. I mean, from under. I mean, naturally it cannot come from down under. I mean, because then it will be night by definition. Of course, I mean, we have, I mean, modern humans, and not only modern, I mean, even million years ago, people actually created fire. But, I mean, so yes, I mean, there is also the issue of artificial light that can come from other direction. But even today, even for the modern person, even today, I mean, we expect light to come from above, and we actually place almost all our, I mean, the vast majority of artificial light sources are placed like right above us, and so it's still true that we expect light to come from the opposite place, like where gravity pulls out. But I think and it's difficult to prove, and maybe I'm wrong, but for my experiment, I think, I mean, it wasn't proven, but I have several evidence that they actually expect light to come from the same place, from the same direction that gravity pulls them to, or otherwise from down under. So it was also demonstrated many times now, and this is, I think we can actually say that it's actually, I mean, this is, and again, you can actually, I mean, it's not 100% certain, because in science, and in that I really subscribe to the Popperian worldview. I mean, as he presented in Conjectures and Refutations, a very famous article from around about 100 years ago, when he said that, I mean, scientific claims cannot be proven, they can only be falsified. So, I mean, let's not get into it right now, but it's a very famous essay, and I totally subscribe to it. I mean, not in 100%, and there is, I mean, to be completely honest, it is a little bit naive. I mean, there is a lot of naivety in this article as well, but it was, what's great about it, that it's really easy to read. I mean, almost anyone can actually read this article, and I recommend everyone to actually read it. It was translated to Hebrew and to many other languages, and I think that with regard to philosophy, it's a great, like, I mean, great favor. Like, I mean, I really appreciate it when philosophers like write important and novel like articles that in a language that is accessible to perhaps not all the population, but I mean to large segment of the population, of the educated population. And this, I mean, even if it comes, and it's almost always comes like in the expense of less like accuracy. So or many naive, or at least like the insertion of a lot of naive assumptions. And so it's a little bit naive, but I mean, it's great, because it's I mean, there's this essay, the Conjectures and Refutation. It's really accessible by, I mean, many like almost like I mean, you really don't like need an out of a background in philosophy or science. You just need to be like an open-minded person with. And so I really, I mean, personally, I think that everyone should actually should read this article, this essay. So the gist of it is that, I mean, we cannot really prove that the model is true because there is always a possibility, as I said, that a newer model will be able to explain the same empirical results. But it was demonstrated again and again that electricity, and specifically one that, I mean, is applied through the method of electrolysis, is substantially helps the creation of life in like very, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's demonstrated very strongly, I mean, and it's again and again. So yes, light is actually required, but I mean, the insertion of the addition of electrolysis is, I mean, makes life, created much, way more, I mean, quickly. But even without it, I mean, even if it's enough that like a little bit of light is present inside like a medium, a petri dish with or something similar, like a experimental dish with my semen and other like stuff and antibacterial stuff. And I mean, if you put it like that for enough time, like protect it from like the environment, but you just need really small amount of light and eventually you will see a worm, like a living thing. So I mean, it's eventually, I mean, life finds a way, as they say. But I mean, this process is way slower. Like, I mean, considerably slower than if you actually add the electrolysis thingy. So now electrolysis is something that I don't know a lot about, but I mean, there are three very close concepts that should be discussed together, and this is the concept of electrolysis, ionization, and galvanization. And we should not, I mean, these are not, they are not identical concepts, but they are closely related. Electrolysis is the method, like what do I actually do? Like I placed, I create a direct current. All of them deal with direct current circuits, and it's important because there is a big difference between direct and alternate currents, and we should speak about it later. So, I mean, you place two rods like, of the direct current, the positive and negative, inside. Not touching each other, but close to each other inside a medium with the liquid. And this is electrolysis. Now, what can actually happen as part of this process are two related processes that are called ionization and galvanization. Now, ionization is actually, I mean, normally, in the common state of matter or elements, you have the same amount of protons and electrons in the elements in an element. For example, if we discuss gold, I mean, so its atomic number is 79. It means that the atomic nucleus of gold contains 79 protons, and there are 79 electrons that hover, or I mean. The actual way of movement is very difficult. I mean, it's actually a great subject of debate, and along the centuries, the view was changed, and it still changes because it's really difficult to actually create experiments on this issue. But I mean, one way or the other, there are 79 electrons that exist. I mean, in some kind of movement around the nucleus. This is the normal, like. State of affairs, but it could be that it's possible for many elements to actually have different like number of electrons, the number of protons, and the process of how you actually do it is called ionization. And forgive me if I'm doing things like oversimplified, because I mean that's the way I can speak about it right now. I mean, I'm sorry that I have my own limitation. So I mean, one of the things that actually happen is that then the element the will then, I mean, if like they have they now lack an electron, like they have 78 electrons instead of 79, they will be attracted to matter that contains like the extra electron. Let's stop here because I mean I don't want to do it oversimplified, but what you get from it is that actually you turn them in, you create a matter that is now attracted to one of the poles. If you will recreate the experiment, when you will do it, you subject it to another electrolysis, you will see that they are all now, and if you will stain or color the matter, you will see that, I mean, the colored matter inside the liquid actually swims to one of the poles. And this was actually a thing that I've seen in my own eyes, and it makes sense that it will happen. And there is also the issue of galvanization, which is and actually way to, I mean, a manufactured process that is used, the process of electrolysis, in order to cover thinly plate or thinly cover matter with another matter. It's used. I mean, as I understand, there is now like an HBO series. It's called the Gilded Age, about like rich families in America or something like that in the end of 19th century. So it's called. I mean, what's gilded? Gilded means like thinly covered with gold or silver or copper or something like that. And so it's. So the process that is used many times is actually exactly what I now described, because it allows, I mean, the matter that is inside the liquid to attract small amount of ions of gold or silver to be attracted to the matter, and then to cover it. And it's an efficient way to cover things with gold. I mean, if you want to cover, I mean, if you want like large thing, or even not large thing, even small thing, but anyway, if you want something to be covered with gold and silver, but you don't want it to have like a thick cover, because it will be very expensive. You want it to look like gold, and you want to actually be gold because you want the properties of gold or silver. You don't want it to be fake gold. You want to be real gold, but you want to be thin because you don't want to waste money, or too much money, right, on it. So it's a process that actually allows you to do it, because I mean you will get a thin. I mean very few relatively atoms, ions of the cover material will be attracted to the matter, and then the matter and will cover it with thin layer of whatever you desire. So these are all interrelated, and they possibly all of them can actually affect the neurons in very significant ways. But I really don't have I still don't have like a strong conclusion on the matter. I can only say what I've seen on my own eyes. Now I am searching for more ways to actually enhance the work of neurons. As we've already seen many times, that I mean the process of creating life is enhanced by the way of electrolysis. So I want more way. I mean I want because I mean right now I do not focus with creating life. My focus is right now to helping the neurons create. I mean, what I've already seen that they can actually do, which is to create sculptures, even like pretty big stuff, not only microscopic. We've already, I mean, let me remind you that they have created, actually, I mean, I call it megastructures, like things like this size of very fine sculptures of animals. And this was already happened. It's not like a theory. So they can create pretty big stuff. Like, and in the microscopic level, we've seen like how they create limbs, or I mean, starting the start of a skeleton of flies, pretty big one. Actually, things that you actually there, even not in microscope, you can actually see it in your own eyes, but in there, it's greatly visible under the microscope with not that large magnification. So they can create stuff like this, and I want them to create stuff like this, but I want to help them, and I also want them to create like I mean, of course, valuable material, gold, diamonds, things like that. But I need them to work like in the much higher capacity, not in the microscopic level. So, I mean, there are all sorts of ways to do it, like make them fatter, like stuff them with like with honey, or create more of them by, I mean, you know, doing, and so. But there is also, I mean, a very promising course of study is to again use electricity to under the assumption that they can actually, take control of the electrical energy and use it for their work. And this is, perhaps you can say, okay, this is an amazing assumption, but this was already, we've already seen, it's already proven that it actually happens. So it's not that amazing because it's a fact. It's not just an hypothesis, it's a fact now. It was established already that they have ways to subdue the I'm sorry that I speak like in mythical or magical terms, because but I don't really have, I don't know what's the correct physical terminology here. Maybe such one that do not yet exist, but they can tame the electrical energy and use it for their own purposes, and this was already proven many times. So it's a fact. We just need to understand how can they do it, because we don't want them to create life. I also hold experiments with creating life, in parallel, and this is something that I do for the political project of upgrading the immoral and redundant and defunct life forms that are now dominant, like the Terran life forms that like Homo sapiens sapiens, and perhaps other life forms as well that should be upgraded to more advanced life forms. And this is very important project, and it's political project, as spoken about already. So I already conduct experiment on parallel with creation of life that serve the project of updating the dominant Terran life forms, most of course, including and most importantly Homo sapiens sapiens. But as aside from that, I want to create matter. So I need to understand how electricity can help the neurons. And the problem with electrolysis is that there are several problems with electrolysis. First of all, we've seen that, first of all, I don't know how to do it outside of, if the neurons do not swim inside the liquid. And maybe it's not even possible, by definition. If they swim inside the liquid and they are subject to light, and it's kind of hard not to subject them to light, because again, I do not work in a lab. I work in the same room where I sleep, and it's it's very small, and I don't have I work in very humble environment, so it's difficult for me to actually work in environment without light. And the best course of action, the best for probably the best would be to actually work in to be able to conduct experiment in environment without any light at all, and in freezing temperature, like inside a freezer. But I don't have such an environment. I have all thing that I have that resembles it is the actual freezer that were the freezer were all the family freezer here that is mostly filled with I don't know, chicken, bread, and things like that. So it's a great limitation. So I can mostly work out outside the freezer and with the presence of a little bit of light. And I don't want the neurons to actually do what they do best with in this environment, which in under electrolysis, which is to create life. It's not what I do want it, but any other, as I said, part of the political project, but part of the material project of creating things that are of value and that can be sold for money. For this purpose, I need to find other ways than electrolysis to supply the neurons with electrical energy. Now, I would say that electrical energy is not the only energy that is. You can also speak about supplying them with chemical energy, or in other ways food. And this is also something that I run experiments let's feed them with this kind of honey or that honey and iron and iodine and things like that. But there is also another form of very common energy, perhaps the most common energy, and this is heat. And I've already held experiments with heat, but it's very difficult to control heat. The problem with heat is that it's dispersed very easily, and and it's difficult for me. And again, especially when I'm not, it's not like a laboratory, so, and I don't want to burn the house. And it's very, I mean, it's very quickly, when you conduct experiment with heat, very quickly you start to burn things. And even if you do not burn like yourself or the whole family house, I mean, it's very easy to burn like metal rods and like wires, and this has already happened, and it's terrible smell. And it's a really big problem to actually control heat. Heat is not easily controlled. It's dispersed to all everywhere very quickly. So I suspended like my experiments with fire and heat for a while, but maybe I will get back to it. Perhaps I will surely get back to it when I have the time, but more importantly, when I have a proper, like a better laboratory, if not a really scientific laboratory, but a place where I can actually know that, I mean, I'm not burning the house where I live. And where I'm actually, it's not only where I live, it's my jail. I'm arrested to this place, besides like 4 hours a day that I can, like from 3 to 7 p.m. that I can, as you see, I can walk outside. But the rest of the day, it's my prison. It's not, it will not create a good impression on the court. I'm subjected to criminal trial right now, and it will not impress the court if I burn the prison where I'm like imprisoned. So let's leave it aside. So we stick to electricity and magnetism. And the problem with electrolysis is, first, as I said, I mean, it's mainly used inside liquid, and liquid is not preferable because it's I mean, they create life in it, and I don't want them to create. I want them to do other stuff. I don't want them to create worms and snakes. I want them to do other stuff. And not all material is like very like, it's not easy for not all material is actually like is sustained inside of liquid. For example, I mean, many things like, I mean, crumble or being like solved, like, I mean, like coffee, like they create, I mean, they mixed with the liquid, and it's not something that I mean, sometimes I want it, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to work in a dry environment, especially for things that I do with material. I mean, matter, like a dead matter, not a living matter, not a moving things like worms. And also another issue is that electrolysis is and ionization, galvanization is it's all things that happen with direct current. And and another problem with direct current is that the way to actually, like, I mean, to have like direct current circuits is either using batteries, which, I mean, I can only use like simple home batteries that, I mean, supply me with very little voltage and amperage, or to use transformer. And the best transformer that I have currently, maybe I can find a better one, but the best transformer that I have is 12 volts, 2 amperes, which creates, I mean, according to Ohm's law, I mean, 24 watts, which is rather, I mean, it's not that much, 24 watts. And we don't actually, I mean, this is the maximum electrical output that we can use. I mean, but actually, I mean, it's not that the neurons actually accepted, I mean, receive that 24 watts. It's, I mean, they will probably actually receive like a fraction of it, even if I use electrolysis. I mean, because most of it probably just is lost. I mean, so it's not that like they can actually get all of it from the liquid. So I've tried to use another method of creating strong magnetic field by creating coils. And this is something that I've already experimented during the last months, a couple of times without a lot of success. And I've also did it yesterday, and again without a lot of success. I'm speaking about this compartment here. The basic idea is that, I mean, if you create, like, if you wrap like a coil with a wire with current, with electric current around an object, it will create a magnetic field around actually the coil. And this is very, I mean, it's very it's a very elemental law in physics. I mean, it's the relationship between current and magnetism. I mean, when you create current, I mean, you also create magnetic field, but it's, I mean, around the current, the matter that where the current flows, but it also goes another way around. I mean, if you move a conductive material inside the magnetic field, you actually create current. And this is actually how 99%, at least, I think, of energy that humankind uses, I mean, in their homes or their, I mean, not including things like cars and diesels and things like that, but, I mean, almost all of electrical output that, I mean, humans use is actually depends on this method of moving conductive matter inside the magnetic field, because I mean that's how most of like power plants actually work. They have a turbine, which is something that, I mean, is revolves by, I mean, the common way to do it, I mean, it's almost always done by heating water, because if you heat water, you create steam, and steam, it can be directed to actually propel a turbine. It is something that is extremely common. It's done like all over the world, like for many years now. So it's the only thing you need to do is actually to burn something, or potentially you can also use the sun. Actually, I worked 6 years in a company that is actually its main technology is using the sun in order to boil water to steam, in order so you will not need to actually burn anything, because mostly the way it's done is by burning stuff like burning. In the past it was coal, but today they use gas or other things like that, like natural gas, but these things are fossil fuels. So I mean, you heat water, you create steam, you propel the turbine, and since the turbine is connected to some kind of like a magnet, and it's oversimplified because it's actually more complicated than that, and sometimes there are several turbines, like there's a superheater, a reheater, and like, I mean, all sorts of stuff. But I mean, the general idea is that you burn stuff, or you use the sun alternatively, but most of the time you actually burn stuff like fossil fuels to heat water. The water is then becomes steam. The steam moves the turbine. The turbine is connected to a huge magnet that is moved, is rotated, because rotation is also movement inside a coil, and then a current is created in the coil, and that's how most of electricity is generated. I mean, the vast majority of electricity is created. Now, since it's moving in rotational manner, you actually generate an alternate currents. Like, I mean, the current is not always in the same direction. It changes direction from here. I mean, from the two, it's changed the direction from here. I mean, for the two possible direction along the current and along the conductive material, and it's actually, I mean, and the way that it's changed is I mean, depends on how fast the turbine is actually moving. I mean, rotating. And the standard is that I mean, in Europe and Israel, it's 50 times a second. There is a change of direction. In the United States, it's 60 times a second. It was generation of electricity 101. So why I speak about it so much? Because I have actually managed to create pretty strong magnets, and this was verified yesterday with the chain that I actually was. So yes, I can create magnets this way, and also the other way with the more traditional way that many children are doing it, like in science classes with screwdriver. But the problem is that it seems that the neurons cannot actually harvest this energy. So this experiment weren't successful in this one is as well still not successful. And what I think happens is that, I mean, is that the fact that I create a magnetic field perhaps is not enough, because it's always the same magnetic field, and the magnetic field should be changed in order for probably, I mean, it's just a hypothesis, but I need a changing magnetic field for, if I want it's just an hypothesis, but there is kind of like, I mean, maybe if you change the magnetic field, the neurons will be able to harvest the electrical energy. And I mean, the logic behind it is that if you change, I mean, why should, in first place, why should it be changed? Because, I mean, because if you use alternative current, I mean, the magnetic field will always change direction. The same way that it was created. I mean, how the electrical current was created initially by a turbine. I mean, it's not here. It's somewhere, I don't know, in the Ashdod or maybe Hadera, like, I mean, in one of the Israelis' power plants. But I mean, it was created. The current was created by rotation of magnetic. Of magnet, a huge magnet inside a large coil or something equivalent. So, in the same way, I mean, if I want to charge my idea, and I know that I do not, like, I cannot actually articulate it way in accurate, using accurate terminology, because it's not my field. I mean, I studied computer sciences in the university, so physics is not my field. So I'm speaking as a layman, but that's what I can do. And by now, I mean, I trust, I mean, the help of God and my good luck. I mean, that perhaps I will be able to actually have improved, like, advancement. And until now, I have done pretty much. I mean, as I said, I mean, we have already had pretty, I mean, impressive positive discoveries. So I that's what I do, and I know that it's all like experiments of a layman, but that's what I am, and that's what I can do. So my current thought is that maybe if I use an electric alternate current, I will create a changing magnetic field, and this will allow the neurons to actually harvest the electrical energy. This could be happen. I mean, even if there's also the question of, I mean, if they themselves are now, I mean, in ionized state. I mean, will it help the process, or will it, I mean, hinder the process, or perhaps it will be, I mean, orthogonal to the process? I don't know, because, I mean, I also subjected to ionization before that, as you remember, like in the Wicked Witch video that is actually very, I mean, there are like 2,000 views for this video, so maybe I'll keep doing like witches video, because I think that people love like to see goo and yellow, and like radioactive goo is very popular by now. So I'll do more of this stuff, like, I mean, the short videos in this channel. So, okay, so I will, from now, I mean, so today I will try to use alternative current. It's much more dangerous because we're not using transformers, so we are dealing with much higher voltage, which could be beneficial because, I mean, yeah, we will get more energy. But one thing we need to do, that I need to do, is to be careful not to create a shortcut, like, I mean, not to create a direct current, not to create a circuit that without any resistance. So there should be kind of resistance, I mean, more than a minimal one, and I need to think about what kind of resistance is actually the beneficial one. I mean, the most easiest way is to create a direct circuit, I mean, to create not direct, circuit like in Q, not on parallel, with another like source of resistance, like maybe perhaps a light bulb. That's the easiest way to ensure that, I mean, your circuit is not have some kind of resistance. But then, I mean, it will affect the voltage and although the amperes that actually are that the magnet is using, in a way that I need to actually calculate in order to understand what's happening, you know, if I want, like, not to burn anything and also to keep everything safe. So there is a little bit of like electrician work right now that I need to understand, that I need to learn in order to not do stupid stuff. So I'll try to learn this stuff in YouTube in the next couple of hours, after I will be eating lunch because I'm really hungry. So that's really our focus for today, how to create like alternative current circuits that are using electrical like sockets in the home in safe and effective way with and we'll try to see if actually this creates, I mean, as expected, an alternative, it will create an alternative, a changing magnetic field, and perhaps it will be the neurons will actually be able to harvest the electrical energy this way. There is a small technical issue, but important one, of what kind of wire should we use, because I've used an exposed wire, which is not really, it's not recommended most of the time. So today I bought a lot of like covered wire, which is mostly what is used. I mean, and specifically if we want to use alternative current, it's much more recommended to actually use not an unexposed, not to use an exposed wire, because again, alternative, I mean, current without that is not transformed to current out, like it just comes out of the socket without transformer, is much more dangerous. So we better use this one, even though it's possibility that the covered there is a possibility that the covered wire will actually hinder the efficacy of the magnetic field, as opposed to uncovered wire. If anyone have like any advice on the matter, I will be glad to hear. But in any way, the magnetic field will be immensely more powerful, because it will be much, I mean, the voltage and the amperage will be much higher. But again, this is something very it's a very technical point that I will be glad to get any advices on this issue. But first of all, let's go to eat something, and then we'll start the experimentation.